Hey guys, tonight we're going to drift east, far back into the annals of time, to a place of soaring pagodas, silken robes, and immense ancient power. We're journeying to Imperial China. Forget the serene, mist-shrouded mountains and wise, placid sages you've seen in paintings and movies. We are peeling back that silken veil to look at the harsh, complex, and deeply regulated reality of life for an ordinary person in the Middle Kingdom. Imagine a world where your every action is governed by tradition, your place in society is fixed at birth, and the all-powerful emperor is considered the literal son of heaven. This isn't a story about discovering your inner kung fu master. It's about trying to survive in one of the most sophisticated yet unforgiving civilizations in history. You probably wouldn't survive your first encounter with the local magistrate without accidentally committing a crime punishable by a serious bamboo beating. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, please drop a comment with your location and local time. It's always fascinating to see where our nightly journeys take us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You have been traveling for what feels like an eternity, a long, dusty journey by caravan along the Silk Road, or perhaps on a crowded barge up a great muddy river. Your mind is filled with tales of the legendary capital, a city of unparalleled wealth and wisdom. As you finally stand before its towering gates, you are ready for wonder. What you get is an immediate, overwhelming shock to every one of your senses. Your romantic notions are about to die a very noisy, very smelly death. The first thing you notice is the bureaucracy. At the city gate, an official in a drab but severe robe needs to see your papers, check your goods, and tax you for the dust on your shoes. It's a very efficient welcome wagon. Guards in simple armor scrutinize your face, their expressions a mixture of boredom and deep suspicion. You are an outsider, a barbarian, and you are made to feel it immediately. This is not a place you can simply wander into. Your very entry is a formal, regulated process. Once through the gates, the second shock hits you. The sheer scale of humanity. The streets are a dense, teeming river of people. You are jostled and shoved by merchants carrying poles laden with goods, porters pushing creaking wheelbarrows, monks in saffron robes, soldiers in formation, and scholars with their noses buried in scrolls. The noise is a deafening wave of sound vendors shouting their wares, officials barking orders, fortune tellers banging gongs, the clatter of wooden cartwheels on stone, and the constant hum of 1,000 simultaneous conversation. And then there is the smell. The city smells of 1,000 wonders, a blend of ginger, star anise, and roasting meats from countless food stalls, mingled with a sweet, heavy scent of incense drifting from a nearby temple. But beneath that is the profound underlying aroma of 1 million people living in close quarters with no modern plumbing. It is the smell of coal smoke, of animal waste, of open drains, and of a world where sanitation is still a theoretical concept. You stand there, a bewildered speck in the chaos. The city itself is a marvel, a planned-out grid of massive boulevards and high walls. As a mainstream historical fact, the great capitals of dynastic China, like Chang'an in the Tang dynasty, were among the largest and most organized cities on Earth, with populations exceeding 1 million people. They were cosmopolitan hubs, drawing traders and travelers from as far away as Persia, India, and the Byzantine Empire. But this organization also meant control. You learn that the city is divided into walled neighborhoods called wards. As a quirky but essential tidbit of daily life, the gates to these wards were shut and locked every single night at the beat of a drum, enforcing a strict curfew. If you were caught out in the streets after the curfew, you would be arrested by the night watch. Your world, which already felt huge and overwhelming, is about to shrink to the size of a single locked city block every evening. You look at the people around you. You see a high-ranking official carried in an ornate sedan chair by 4 straining servants, his face a mask of serene indifference. Moments later, you see a beggar in rags, his body covered in sores, pleading for a single copper coin. You see a wealthy merchant's wife, her face powdered white, her robes made of shimmering silk, and you see a farm girl, her face brown from the sun, carrying a heavy wicker basket of vegetables to the market. The rigid social strata are on full display. You thought you were a worldly traveler. To the locals, you are a strange-looking, odd-smelling barbarian who probably doesn't even know which direction the emperor faces when he sneezes. They are not wrong. What is the nature of this magnificent, terrifying place? Historians still argue whether these massive imperial cities were dynamic engines of culture and commerce that offered opportunity and a rich life to their citizens, or if they were primarily oppressive, over-regulated population centers designed for the sole purposes of imperial control, surveillance, and efficient tax collection. Standing in the middle of the street, deafened by the noise, assaulted by the smells, and intimidated by the sheer regulated scale of it all, you feel a profound sense of being out of your depth. Your romantic vision of a serene, poetic China has been shattered and replaced by a reality that is far more crowded, complex, and controlling than you could ever have imagined. Your journey has just begun, and you are already lost. As you stand amidst the overwhelming chaos of the imperial city, you begin to notice the invisible currents that govern the swirling river of humanity. You see the way a richly dressed man in a cart doesn't even seem to notice the farmer who leaps out of his way, bowing his head. You see how a shopkeeper speaks with deep deference to one customer and with curt dismissal to another. You are beginning to understand the most fundamental and inescapable truth of this new world. Your identity is not your own. You are defined by your place in the rigid social order, and you learn you were born into a specific, inescapable class. This social structure, a core concept of Confucian philosophy, has been the bedrock of this civilization for 1,000 years. It is a pyramid with 4 main tiers, the 4 occupations, and your survival depends on knowing where you fit. At the very top are the shi, the scholar gentry. These are not hereditary nobles who inherited their power, but the educated elite, the men who have dedicated their lives to studying the classics and have passed the grueling imperial examinations. They are the administrators, the magistrates, the governors, and the advisors to the emperor. They wear fine silk robes, they are masters of calligraphy and poetry, and they command immense respect and power. They are the head of the social body. Below them are the nong, the peasant farmers. In the official ideology, the farmers are the second most respected class. They are the backbone of the empire, the producers of the food and silk that sustains everyone else. They are praised in poetry and official documents as virtuous and essential. In reality, their lives are ones of relentless, backbreaking toil and poverty, subject to crushing taxes, droughts, floods, and the whims of the very scholar officials who are supposed to be governing them. Next are the gong, the artisans and craftsmen. These are the men who build the magnificent temples, weave the beautiful silks, carve the intricate jade, and cast the bronze bells. Their skills are valued, and they create the material wealth and beauty of the empire. But because they do not produce food, and they do not govern with their minds, they are considered a step below the farmers. And finally, at the bottom of this respectable hierarchy are the shang, the merchants and traders. As a traveler with goods or money, this is likely where you fall. Merchants may become incredibly wealthy, far wealthier than any farmer or even some scholars, but they are ideologically despised. Confucian thought views them as parasitic, producing nothing of their own but merely profiting from the transportation and sale of goods made by the more virtuous farmers and artisans. They are seen as greedy, materialistic, and a morally suspect class. You quickly learn the social ladder has 4 main rungs. You, a traveler with a bit of coin, are on the bottom one. At least you're not a soldier or an actor, who are apparently on a different, much shorter ladder located in the basement. Indeed, below these 4 classes are the debased or mean people, which includes soldiers, butchers, actors, and government runners, whose professions were considered so unclean or disreputable that they were often hereditary and barred from even attempting the Imperial Exam. This social status is not just a philosophical concept, it is a visible, legally enforced reality. As a quirky but telling historical tidbit, various dynasties enacted sumptuary laws that dictated what different classes could wear. As a merchant, you might be legally forbidden from wearing fine silk or certain colors, like imperial yellow, which were reserved for the scholar gentry and the emperor. Your wealth might allow you to afford a silk robe, but wearing one could result in a public beating or a heavy fine. Your place in society is written on your very clothes for all to see. But was this official disdain for merchants the whole story? Historians still argue whether the official Confucian contempt for the merchant class reflected their actual social power, or if it was a philosophical ideal that masked the reality of a growing and immensely influential group who often used their wealth to educate their sons, buy land, and collude with the very scholar officials who publicly scorned them. For you, the immediate reality is that you must learn your place, and fast. The path to social mobility is simple. Just dedicate 18 years of your life to memorizing 1,000 classic texts, and then beat 1,000,000 other people in a series of grueling exams. No problem. For now, you must perform the complex ballet of deference. Knowing who to bow to, how low to bow, and when to avert your eyes is the most important survival skill. Getting it wrong can result in anything from a dirty look to a public flogging. It really incentivizes good posture. You stand at a street corner, watching the intricate social dance unfold. You are no longer just a traveler in a strange land. You are a component, a specific piece in a vast, ancient, and unforgiving social machine. Your worth, your rights, and your future are all defined by a label that was placed upon you the moment you entered the city gates. And escaping it will be the single hardest thing you ever do. Now that you understand your lowly place in the great social pyramid, you must figure out how to survive within it. As a merchant or artisan, your goal is to make a living, perhaps by setting up a small stall in the bustling market to sell your wares. It is here, in this first attempt at simple commerce, that you run headfirst into a wall so vast and so powerful that it makes the city's ramparts look like a garden fence. You are about to confront the endless paperwork, the arbitrary rules, and the suffocating officialdom of the Imperial Chinese state. Your next great challenge is drowning in an ocean of bureaucracy. Let's say you want to sell the small trinkets you brought with you from your homeland. You find a spot in the market, but you are immediately approached by a stern market supervisor. He informs you that to sell anything, you need a permit. To get a permit, you must go to the district administrative office, the local headquarters of the government, known as the Yamen. The Yamen is the nerve center of the imperial bureaucracy, a sprawling, intimidating compound of courtyards and halls from which a single man, the district magistrate, exercises absolute power over the lives of tens of thousands of people. You enter the Yamen and are immediately lost in a sea of activity. Clerks and scribes with ink-stained fingers rush back and forth, carrying stacks of paper documents or bundles of bamboo slips. The air smells of ink, old paper, and the faint, metallic scent of authority. You, a commoner, are not permitted to approach the magistrate directly. You must deal with a series of underclerks and functionaries, each of whom seems to regard your request with profound indifference. You quickly learn that nothing moves in this system without the proper application of a gift. A few well-placed copper coins discreetly passed to a clerk can suddenly make your paperwork rise to the top of the stack. The magistrate's court has a guilty until proven bankrupt policy. If you can afford enough gifts, your innocence is much easier to establish. After hours of waiting and a significant portion of your remaining funds spent on gifts, you might finally get your permit. But this is just the beginning of your relationship with the state. The bureaucracy is everywhere. There are taxes on everything. A tax on your stall, a tax on every transaction you make, a tax on essential commodities like salt and iron, which are often state monopolies. And then there is the corvée labor, a tax paid not in coin but in your own sweat, where you can be conscripted for a month or more each year to work on government projects like repairing canals or building walls. This entire system was one of the most sophisticated and enduring administrative structures in the ancient world, a mainstream historical fact that allowed emperors to govern a vast and populous empire. But from your perspective on the ground, it feels less like a sophisticated system of governance and more like a tool of relentless extraction. Historians still argue whether the immense and complex imperial bureaucracy was primarily a tool for effective governance and providing social stability over a vast territory, or if it was an inherently oppressive system designed to extract the maximum possible resources from the populace for the benefit of the state and the scholar gentry who ran it, the state's control over your life extends even to your neighbors. You are soon introduced to a quirky but powerful system of social control, perhaps the Baojia system. Your household is organized into a group of 10. This group is collectively responsible for the actions of all its members. If your neighbor, Mr. Wei, fails to pay his taxes, you and the other 8 households can be punished for it. If his son commits a crime and you fail to report it, you are considered an accessory. You are now responsible for the actions of your 9 closest neighbors. You don't even like your neighbors. This seems like a design flaw. This system effectively turned every citizen into an agent of the state, creating a powerful web of mutual surveillance that discouraged dissent and ensured compliance. Everything requires a stamp, a seal, a document. To sell a single rice cake, you need to fill out 3 forms in triplicate, get a seal from the market master, and offer a gift to the assistant scribe. By the time you're approved, the rice cake has achieved enlightenment and moved on. To travel to the next province requires an internal passport. To build a new wall on your tiny rented property requires a permit from the Office of Work. You stand at your market stall. You're freshly inked and very expensive, permit in hand. You look around at the guards patrolling the market, at the tax collector making his rounds with his abacus and ledger, at the scribes noting every transaction. You realize that you are not a free agent in a land of opportunity. You are a registered, documented, and taxable subject of the emperor. Every aspect of your economic life is subject to the approval and scrutiny of a vast, impersonal, and inescapable bureaucracy. The state is not a distant entity. It is a constant, suffocating presence in every transaction of your daily life. After weeks of being ground down by the suffocating bureaucracy, you look at the serene, silk-robed scholar officials who glide through the city with an air of absolute authority. You see the respect they command, the power they wield, and you realize there is only one single, near impossible path up and out of your lowly station. You decide to dedicate your life to attempting the brutal civil service exam, the great and terrible institution that serves as the sole engine of social mobility in Imperial China. You are about to enter the nightmare of the Imperial Exam. The dream of the examination system is a beautiful one. In theory, it is a perfect meritocracy. Any man, no matter how humble his birth, with the exception of the debased classes, can rise to become a powerful governor or even a minister to the emperor himself, based purely on his own intellect and learning. The reality is a grueling, life-consuming ordeal with a failure rate so high it borders on the absurd. First, there is the preparation. You do not simply decide to take the exam next Tuesday. It requires decades of single-minded, arduous study. From a young age, you must forsake all other work and dedicate yourself to memorizing, word for word, the foundational texts of Confucian philosophy, the 4 books, and the 5 classics. This is hundreds of thousands of complex characters, a vast corpus of dense philosophy, intricate history, and subtle poetry. The curriculum covers thousands of years of classical thought. There is, however, no module on basic plumbing or how not to die of famine, which seem like more practical skills for governing. This level of intense full-time study is a luxury that 99% of the population cannot afford. A farmer's son is needed in the fields. An artisan's son is needed in the workshop. Only the sons of wealthy landowners or merchants, the very class that was officially disdained, could afford to support a child through 20 years of non-productive study. The great meritocracy, you quickly realize, has a very high financial barrier to entry. After decades of study, if you haven't given up or starved, you are finally ready to attempt the first level of the exams. The examination itself is a multi-day horror. You arrive at a vast walled examination compound, a city of cell. Before entering, you are subjected to a rigorous search to prevent cheating, a practice that, as a quirky but telling tidbit, became increasingly elaborate over the centuries. Guards would inspect your clothing, your hair buns, your inkstones, and even your food, looking for hidden notes or crib sheets. Once inside, you are led to your personal examination cell, where you will be locked in for 3 days and 2 nights. Your examination cell is a cozy 3 by 6 foot box. It comes with a board for writing and a board for sleeping. The amenities are minimalist. You are in complete isolation. You cannot speak to anyone. Guards patrol the narrow lanes between the rows of cells, their footsteps a constant reminder that you are being watched. Inside this tiny prison, you must perform feats of immense intellectual and creative endurance under crushing pressure. You will be given a series of topics, usually obscure phrases from the classics, and you must compose elaborate essays and poems on them in a highly restrictive and stylized format like the infamous 8-legged essay. You must not only demonstrate your perfect recall of the source text, but also your mastery of calligraphy, your poetic sensibility, and your adherence to a rigid, conservative Confucian worldview. Was this system truly designed to find the best and brightest? Historians still argue whether the imperial examination system was a genuine meritocracy that fostered good governance by selecting the most learned and disciplined men, or if it was a sophisticated tool of ideological control, ensuring that the entire ruling class was deeply indoctrinated in a state-sanctioned conservative worldview that prized conformity and tradition over innovation and critical thought. And after all this, the decades of study, the expense, the psychological torment of the exam itself, your chances of success are infinitesimally small. As a mainstream historical fact, the pass rates for the imperial exams were staggering low. At the provincial level, it was often less than 1%. Countless men spent their entire lives as professional students, taking the exams again and again, growing old and grey in their pursuit of a degree that would forever elude them. Your chances of passing are roughly the same as being struck by lightning while riding a unicorn. But the faint, glittering hope is what keeps the entire system going. You sit in your cramped, cold cell, your back aching, your knuckles stained with ink. The prompt before you is a line from Confucius about the virtue of a well-ordered family. Your mind, exhausted and strained, struggles to form the elegant, perfectly balanced phrases required. You look out through the small, barred opening in your cell door at the endless, identical rows of other cells, each containing another man just like you, gambling his entire life on the single throw of the dice. You realize that this ladder to the heavens is, for almost all who try to climb it, just a more scholarly, more refined, and more heartbreaking kind of torture chamber. Having failed to climb the social ladder through the nightmarish gate of the imperial exams, you are now just another face in the crowd, a commoner trying to eke out a living. It is in this vulnerable state that you have a minor dispute with a neighbor, or perhaps you are accused of shortchanging a customer in the market. You are about to get a hands-on lesson in the imperial legal system, and you will discover very quickly that the law will not protect you. Its only purpose is to protect the order of the state, and its methods are harsh and its punishments are terrifying. You are dragged by 2 imposing guards to the yamen, the same bureaucratic office you once visited for a permit. This time, however, you are brought to the courthouse within the compound. The air is cold and intimidating. The magistrate, the same scholar official you once envied, sits on a raised platform behind a large desk. His face, an impassive mask. There is no jury of your peers, no lawyer to argue your case. There is only you, standing before the absolute power of the state. The trial is a straightforward 2-step process. Step 1, you are accused. Step 2, you are punished. It saves a lot of time on things like evidence. The legal philosophy here is the opposite of what you might expect. You are not innocent until proven guilty. You are guilty because you have been accused and have disturbed the harmony of the community by being brought here. The entire burden of proof is on you to demonstrate your innocence, an almost impossible task without witnesses of high status or the money for significant bribes. The magistrate questions you. You deny the accusation. He scoffs, dismissing your pleas. What he needs, what the system requires for a conviction, is a confession. And he has many ways of getting one. You have the right to remain silent. If you do, you will be beaten until you are no longer silent. It's a very clear policy. As a mainstream historical fact, judicial torture was a standard, legal and expected part of any criminal investigation in Imperial China. If a suspect refused to confess, the magistrate could order them to be persuaded. This might begin with a device for crushing fingers or being forced to kneel on sharp iron chains. The most common method, however, was the bamboo cane. You are stripped and held down over a bench while a court runner administers a prescribed number of blows with either a light or heavy bamboo cane. It is agonizing, humiliating, and designed to break your will. A few strokes will leave you bruised and bleeding, a few dozen can cripple you for life, or cause fatal internal injuries. Under this duress, almost everyone confesses, whether they are guilty or not. Once your confession is secured, the magistrate delivers your sentence. For a minor offence, the beating itself might be the punishment, or you could be sentenced to the kang. This is a heavy wooden board locked around your neck and shoulders like a portable stock. You are forced to wear this device, sometimes weighing 20 or 30 pounds for weeks or months, parading through the streets as an object of public humiliation. You cannot feed yourself or lie down comfortably and must rely on the charity of family or strangers to survive. For more serious crimes, the punishments escalate in terror. You could be exiled to the farthest, most inhospitable frontiers of the Empire malarial jungle in the south or a frozen wasteland in the north. This was often a slow, miserable death sentence. For the most heinous crimes like treason or rebellion, capital punishment was a public spectacle designed to horrify and deter. This could include beheading or the infamous Linkaith, death by 1,000 cuts. You might notice, while waiting for your own judgment, another, wealthier merchant being brought before the magistrate. Their interaction is different. There is a great deal of bowing and polite language. As the merchant leaves, you might see him pass close to the magistrate, and with a subtle movement, a small, heavy packet passes from his possession into the long, flowing water sleeves of the official's robe. This quirky, non-verbal exchange is bribery in action, a silent language of corruption. The charges against the wealthy merchant are quietly dismissed for lack of evidence. This entire system, so brutal and seemingly arbitrary, was designed to enforce order. But did it work? Historians still argue whether the harshness and brutality of the imperial legal system created a genuinely orderly and law-abiding society through overwhelming fear, or if it fostered a deep-seated culture of corruption, false accusations, and simmering resentment against the state and its officials. After your own painful and humiliating beating, you are thrown back out into the street. You are bruised, broken, and have learned a powerful lesson. The law is not a shield to protect the weak. It is a hammer used by the state to crush dissent and maintain order. Your rights are non-existent, and your only protection is to remain utterly invisible and to never ever fall into its grasp again. The bruises from the magistrate's bamboo justice begin to fade, but they are replaced by a more familiar ache, the hollow, persistent gnawing of hunger. Your encounter with the law has left you poorer and more cautious, forcing you back into the fundamental daily struggle that defines life for the vast majority of people in the empire. You must navigate the dreary realities of a meager diet, the ever-present threat of famine, and the poor sanitation that makes every meal a gamble. This is the life of rice, grime, and disease. Forget the lavish multi-course banquets of the wealthy. Your daily diet is a testament to monotonous, carbohydrate-heavy survival. If you're in the south of the empire, you eat rice. You eat steamed rice for your main meal, and a watery rice porridge called congee for your breakfast. If you are in the north, you eat wheat or millet, usually in the form of steamed buns or noodles. Your diet consists of three main food groups: rice, sad pickled cabbage, and more rice. It's a culinary adventure. This staple grain is supplemented with a small portion of pickled vegetables for flavor, and, if you're lucky, a tiny piece of fermented bean curd. Meat is a rare luxury, something you might taste only once or twice a year during a major festival. This simple diet keeps you alive, but just barely. And it is incredibly precarious. Your entire community's survival is dependent on the annual harvest. A season of drought or a flood on one of the great rivers can mean crop failure, which inevitably leads to famine. Famine is not a rare occurrence. It is a recurring, terrifying spectre that haunts the memory of every generation, a time when neighbors starve and society breaks down. Even when food is available, the environment you live in is a breeding ground for sickness. You get your water from a communal well or directly from the local canal. This water is murky, and you know it's the same water that people wash their clothes in, that animals drink from, and that is contaminated by the city's waste. There is no concept of a sewer system. Instead, every morning, men with carts make their rounds to collect the night soil, the contents of every household's chamber pot. This collection of human waste is a mainstream historical fact and a cornerstone of traditional Chinese agriculture. The night soil is not disposed of. It is highly valued as a fertilizer and is transported to the fields outside the city to nourish the very crops you will later eat. The city has an innovative recycling program where the contents of your chamber pot tonight become the fertilizer for your vegetables next season. It's a very closed loop. While the system is remarkably efficient at returning nutrients to the soil, it also ensures a perfect, terrifying cycle for the transmission of disease. Pathogens like cholera and dysentery are constantly recycled from the population to the fields and back into the food supply. When you inevitably fall ill from the food or the water, you do not see the university-trained physician who treats the magistrate. You visit a local herbalist or a practitioner of traditional medicine. Their understanding of your illness is not based on humors, but on concepts of life energy or QI, and the balance between the opposing forces of yin and yang. They might diagnose you by taking your pulse at several points on your wrist or examining the color and coating of your tongue. The treatments are a world away from the bleeding and purging of the West. You might be prescribed a complex, bitter-tasting soup made from a dozen different dried herbs, roots, and minerals designed to restore the flow of qi in your body. Or you might undergo acupuncture, where the practitioner inserts fine needles into specific points on your body, or moxibustion, where a smoldering herb is held near the skin to warm those same points. You have a choice of treatments: a bitter herbal soup that tastes like dirt, or having someone stick needles in you. Or you can just have the disease. All options are equally appealing. Were these treatments effective? Historians still argue whether the complex systems of traditional Chinese medicine, with their emphasis on holistic balance and herbal remedies, were genuinely effective at treating common ailments and diseases, or if their success was largely due to the placebo effect and the body's natural ability to heal, especially when compared to the actively harmful heroic treatments common in the West. To combat the questionable water, everyone drinks tea. Tea is not a delicate social beverage. It is a daily necessity. The water is boiled to make it, which, unbeknownst to you, is the single most important public health practice in your world, killing many of the pathogens. As a quirky tidbit, tea was often transported and stored in the form of hard compressed bricks. You would break off a piece of the brick and boil it. In some remote parts of the empire, these tea bricks were so valuable and portable that they were even used as a form of currency. You sit in your small rented room, sipping your hot tea and eating your bowl of plain rice. You have survived your brush with the law, but now you face the daily, grinding, and far more common battle for survival against hunger and disease. The grand politics of the Forbidden City are a world away. Your world is one of basic, visceral needs, and just making it to tomorrow with a full stomach and without a fever is a victory in itself. You recover from your fever, your body slowly regaining its strength, but you do not recover into a life of freedom. You are now healthy enough to resume your duties, and in Imperial China, your most important duty is not to yourself, but to your family. You are about to be crushed by the immense weight of family and gender expectations, where your personal desires are a footnote in a story written by your ancestors, and your life is dictated by the relentless demands of filial piety. The fundamental unit of this society is not the individual. It is the family clan. Your personal ambitions, your dreams, your romantic inclinations all are secondary to the honor, prosperity, and continuation of the family line. This entire social structure is held together by the supreme Confucian virtue of xiao, or filial piety. As a mainstream historical fact, filial piety was more than just a moral guideline. It was the law of the land. It demanded your absolute obedience, respect, and reverence for your parents and elders. To disobey or, heaven forbid, strike a parent was a capital offense, Filial piety means you must honor your parents in all things, even when their primary advice is you're doing everything wrong and why can't you be more like your successful cousin. Some things are universal. Your life's path is not for you to choose. You have a dream of becoming a traveling musician. Your father has a dream of you taking over his small, struggling pottery business. Guess whose dream wins? Here's a hint. It smells like clay, not applause. Your career is chosen for you, and so is your spouse. Finding a spouse is easy. Your parents find a suitable family with a good reputation and a child of the opposite gender who is not obviously cursed. Romance is not a major consideration. The marriage is a transaction negotiated by your parents to forge a beneficial alliance or improve the family's social standing. The single most important duty of that marriage is to produce a son. Daughters are considered temporary members of the family. They will eventually marry and become part of their husband's clan. A son is required to carry on the family name, to tend the ancestral shrine, and to care for you in your old age. The pressure to have a son is immense. A wife who produces only daughters might be scorned, and a husband might legally take on a second wife or concubine in the hopes of producing a male heir. So intense was this need that, as a quirky but telling tidbit, some families would even arrange spirit marriages. If a son died before he could marry, his parents might arrange for his ghost to be married to a living woman, or even another ghost, to ensure his spirit had a family in the afterlife, and that the lineage was, in a ritual sense, continued. If you are a woman in this world, the expectations are even more crushing and restrictive. Your life is governed by the 3 obediences. You are to obey your father before marriage, your husband after marriage, and your sons if you are widowed. Your world is almost entirely confined to the domestic sphere, and your body itself might be physically altered to reflect your status. For many centuries, the practice of foot binding was common, especially among the upper classes. Young girls would have their feet tightly bound, breaking the arches and curling the toes under to create tiny lotus feet. This excruciatingly painful and crippling practice was seen as a mark of beauty and refinement, a sign that a woman was so high status she would never need to perform physical labor or walk any significant distance. What was the reality for women within this system? Historians still argue whether the prescribed Confucian roles for women were universally oppressive, reducing them to mere property, or if women were able to exercise considerable informal power and influence within the domestic sphere as the managers of the household economy, as mothers, and eventually as powerful and respected mothers-in-law who held sway over their sons and their sons' wives. Your duty extends beyond the living. You must also serve the dead. In your home is a small ancestral altar, where wooden tablets inscribed with the names of your deceased ancestors are kept. You are expected to maintain this shrine, to burn incense regularly, and to make offerings of food and wine on specific festival days. These ancestors are not just memories, they are considered active spiritual presences who watch over the family, offering blessings if they are pleased, and bringing misfortune if they are neglected. You stand in your small home, your body finally healed from your illness, only to feel the immense, suffocating pressure of your social obligations. Your life is not a journey of self-discovery. It is a set of predetermined roles to be fulfilled, to be a dutiful son or daughter, an obedient spouse, a parent to a male heir, and a servant to the spirits of the dead. Every choice is made for you. To deviate from this path is to bring shame, dishonor, and possibly ruin upon your entire family. This is the true cage you live in, not one of iron bars, but one of invisible, unbreakable cultural expectation. Having come to terms with your crushing obligations to your living and deceased family members, you might think you understand your place in the cosmos. But you are about to discover that your filial duties are just the first, innermost circle of a vast and complex spiritual world. Your life is not just governed by your parents and the magistrate. It is dictated by the whims of 1,000 gods, the demands of 1,000,000 ghosts, and a complex code of superstitions and rituals that you must appease every single day. The spiritual landscape of Imperial China is a rich, crowded, and often confusing tapestry. It is not a single, unified religion, but a practical blending of different belief systems. As a mainstream historical fact, the three teachings, Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, coexisted and syncretized over centuries. For you, an ordinary person, they aren't competing philosophies. They are a complementary toolkit for navigating life. You follow Confucian ethics for social harmony, you might look to Taoist principles for aligning with nature, and you turn to Buddhist concepts for understanding karma and the afterlife. This has resulted in a folk religion that imagines the spirit world as a massive bureaucracy, a celestial mirror of the imperial government on earth. Appeasing the gods is like dealing with the celestial bureaucracy. You have to make sure you're filing your prayer with the right department. Otherwise, the god of healthy livestock gets your requests for help with a toothache. At the top is the Jade Emperor, presiding over a host of lesser deities with specific jobs. Every city has its own city god, the divine equivalent of your local magistrate who protects the town from disasters and judges the souls of the dead. Every home has a kitchen god, Zhao Jun, who watches over the family's daily conduct. This divine bureaucracy requires constant attention. You burn sticks of fragrant incense at the local temple, the smoke carrying your prayers up to the heavens. You leave small offerings of food and wine at household shrine. A particularly quirky and charming ritual involves the kitchen god. It was believed that once a year, just before the Lunar New Year, the kitchen god would ascend to heaven to give his annual report on your family's behavior to the Jade Emperor. To ensure a favorable review, families would smear a dab of honey or sticky malt candy on the lips of his paper image, either to sweeten his words or to make his mouth too sticky to say anything bad about you. And then there are the ghosts. The world is filled with the spirits of the dead, or gui. While your own ancestors are, hopefully, benevolent guardians, the world is also teeming with hungry ghosts. The miserable, wandering spirits of those who died violently have no descendants to care for them or were not given a proper burial. These ghosts are malevolent and dangerous, bringing sickness and misfortune. You must appease them, especially during the annual Ghost Festival, when you will burn paper money and leave out offerings of food on the streets to placate these lonely spirits and persuade them not to trouble your household. You leave out some of your leftover rice porridge. If they don't like it, they can haunt the cook. Your life is also governed by a constant stream of omens and the need for divination. A twitching eyelid, a crow landing on your roof, the way a cup shatters when you drop at everything is a potential message from the spirit world. Before any important undertaking a journey, a marriage, the building of a new schedule must determine if the day is auspicious. You will consult a fortune teller who might use I Ching coins, analyze the shape of your face, or interpret the patterns in the stars to guide your decision. Even the placement of your home and everything in it is a matter of grave spiritual importance. You must abide by the principles of feng shui, the art of cosmic alignment. You learn that your front door cannot face a certain direction lest it invite bad energy or QI. The position of your bed, the location of your well, the placement of your ancestors' gravesoul must be carefully calculated to harmonize with the flow of cosmic energy. You can't build your pigsty there. It will block the flow of auspicious energy to the turnip patch. The turnips will be listless and unhappy. It's just common sense. Was this all-encompassing web of belief a comfort or a burden? Historians still argue whether this complex world of superstition and ritual was a source of profound anxiety and a barrier to rational thought, constantly reminding people of the dangers surrounding them, or if it provided a vital sense of order, meaning, and psychological comfort in a world filled with the chaos of famine, disease, and political upheaval. Standing in your humble home, you look at the image of the kitchen god on the wall, the small offering of an orange before your ancestral tablets, and the good luck charm hanging over your door. You are a subject of the emperor on earth, but you are also a citizen of a vast and crowded spiritual world. Every action you take, from building a fence to choosing a wedding date, is fraught with invisible significance, and a single misstep can bring down the wrath of gods and ghosts upon your head. The incense from your morning offerings has barely dissipated when you turn to the real work that governs your existence. The complex anxieties of gods, ghosts, and bureaucracy fade into the background, replaced by a single, overwhelming, physical reality. You are a peasant farmer, a member of the vast majority. Your life is not a story of intrigue or scholarship. It is a story of sweat, mud, and calluses. You are about to experience the back-breaking reality of agricultural labor, an endless cycle of toil from dawn until dusk. You step out of your small, dark hut into the morning light and head for the fields. Your high-tech farming equipment consists of a stick for poking holes and another, slightly different stick for cutting things. The innovation is breathtaking. You might own a simple wooden plow, perhaps tipped with a little precious iron. If your family is relatively prosperous, you might own a single placid water buffalo to help you pull it. If not, the plow is pulled by you, your spouse, and your older children, your bodies straining against the weight of turning the heavy, wet earth. If you live in the rice-growing south, your life is dictated by the paddy. For weeks during the planting season, you spend your entire day, from the first light to the last, bent over at the waist, standing ankle-deep in cold, muddy water. You painstakingly transplant the young, bright green rice seedlings one by one, your fingers nimble, your back screaming in a constant dull protest. You spend 10 hours a day bent over in a flooded field. It's fantastic for your posture and gives you a deep, personal relationship with the local leeches. This method of intensive rice cultivation, a mainstream historical fact of the era, was what allowed China's population to boom. The introduction of new, fast-ripening strains of champa rice meant that you could often harvest 2 or even 3 crops a year from the same small plot of land. But this miracle of production was paid for with your body. The work is relentless. After planting comes weeding, which is also done by hand, bent over in the searing summer sun. Then you must manage the intricate network of canals and dikes that irrigate the paddies, constantly monitoring water levels, a task that never truly ends. To cope with the sheer monotony and physical strain of these tasks, you and your neighbors might employ a quirky but essential tool: music. As you all stand in a line in the paddy, transplanting seedlings, one person might begin a work song. Soon everyone joins in, the rhythmic chant setting the pace of the work, synchronizing your movements, and providing a small human comfort against the immense, silent indifference of the landscape. It is a brief moment of communal grace in a life of individual toil. When the harvest finally comes, it is not a time of rest, but the most frantic period of all. You are back in the fields, bent over again, this time with a small, sharp sickle, cutting the stalks of rice by hand, bunching them, and carrying the heavy sheaves to be threshed. You work until you can no longer see, and then you fall into an exhausted sleep, only to rise before dawn and do it all again. Your work-life balance is heavily weighted towards work. Life is the few hours you spend unconscious before the rooster yells at you again. Was this life one of unrelenting misery? Historians still argue whether the life of the Chinese peasant was one of constant, grinding oppression and misery, with their surplus endlessly extracted by landlords and the state, or if, during periods of good harvest and stable governance, it allowed for a simple but meaningful life defined by strong family and village bonds and a degree of personal autonomy within their small world. All you know is the physical reality. Your hands are a testament to your life's work. They are thick with calluses, the skin cracked, and permanently stained with dirt. Your face is tanned a deep, leathery brown. Your back has a permanent stoop from a lifetime of bending over. In your 40th year, you look 60. The quiet dignity afforded to the non-class in Confucian philosophy feels like a distant, abstract joke compared to the immediate, aching reality of your own body. You stand up straight for a moment in the middle of the rice paddy, the setting sun casting a long shadow behind you. You look at the endless, shimmering green of the fields, the source of your life and your bondage. You are not a bureaucrat or a scholar. You are a beast of burden, a human engine that powers the entire empire on a diet of rice and pickles. The sun sets, and your workday is finally over. You trudge home, your body screaming for rest, ready for a meager meal before you fall asleep, and gather the strength to do it all over again tomorrow. Your life as a peasant farmer is a constant, grueling negotiation with the soil. You pour your sweat and your entire being into your small plot of land, hoping the earth will reward you with enough food to survive another year. But you are about to learn that this negotiation is profoundly one-sided. All your back-breaking toil, all your carefully observed rituals to the gods, can be wiped out in a single afternoon. In Imperial China, nature itself is often the greatest and most terrifying enemy, and you must face floods, droughts, and other epic natural disasters with no safety net. Let's say you live near the great Huanghe, the Yellow River. It is the lifeblood of the northern plains, the source of the water that irrigates your fields. It is also known as China's sorrow. As a mainstream historical fact, the Yellow River has a long and tragic history of catastrophic floods. It carries an immense amount of silt, which causes the riverbed to rise over time. Eventually, the man-made dikes that line its banks can no longer contain it. The Yellow River has two moods: not enough water and all of the water everywhere, all at once. It's not great at moderation. You stand on the dike one summer afternoon, watching the churning yellow water rise with terrifying speed after weeks of heavy rain upstream. A sense of panic ripples through your village. An army of peasants is called out to reinforce the dikes with sandbags and earth, but it's a futile effort against the immense pressure. Then, with a sound like thunder, a section of the dike collapses. It is not a gentle overflowing. It is a wall of water, thick with yellow mud, that roars across the landscape, obliterating everything in its path. Your fields, your home, your entire village all are swallowed by the flood in a matter of minutes. You are left clinging to a treetop, if you are lucky, with nothing left in the world but the wet clothes on your back. The opposite extreme is just as deadly. Imagine a year of drought. The sky remains a pale, merciless blue for months on end. The crops in your field, once green and hopeful, turn a sickly yellow, then wither to brown dust. The earth cracks open in a web of deep fissures. The village well runs dry. The water buffalo, your most prized possession, grows gaunt and then dies. You are faced with the slow, agonizing prospect of starvation. During such a time, the local magistrate might be called upon to perform a quirky but essential duty, a public rainmaking ceremony. He will lead a solemn procession to a local temple, make sacrifices, and perform elaborate rituals to appease the dragon kings who control the rain. The magistrate is performing the sacred rain dance. So far, it has produced a lot of solemn chanting and an increase in dust. We remain hopeful, and if the drought or the floods don't get you, there are other horrors. One day, you might notice a strange darkening of the horizon, accompanied by a low, deafening hum that grows steadily louder. It is not a storm cloud, it is a plague of locusts, a living, shimmering brown cloud, billions strong, that sweeps over the landscape. A cloud of locusts descends. They eat your crops, your house's thatched roof, and the clothes off your back. On the bright side, free protein, if you're quick and not squeamish. They devour every green thing in their path, stripping your fields bare in a matter of hours, leaving behind a scene of absolute desolation. The imperial state, for all its power and bureaucracy, often struggled to cope with these disasters. For centuries, the government organized massive water control projects, building the dikes along the rivers and the thousands of miles of the Grand Canal. But were these projects a sign of the state's power to control nature, or a sign of its vulnerability? Historians still argue whether these massive state-organized water control projects were primarily effective tools for preventing disaster and promoting agriculture, or if their frequent catastrophic failures due to corruption or poor engineering actually exacerbated the scale of natural disasters when they inevitably occurred. In the aftermath of a flood or a famine, there is no government relief agency to help you. You and thousands of others become refugees, forced to abandon your ruined land and wander the countryside begging for food. This is when society can break down, when desperate farmers become bandits, and when the stage is set for rebellion. You stand in your field, now a wasteland of dried mud and debris left by the receding floodwaters. Everything you worked for, everything your family has owned for generations, is gone. You understand with a brutal clarity that your life is balanced on a knife's edge, not just socially or politically, but environmentally. You are utterly powerless in the face of nature's immense, indifferent force. Your hard work means nothing. Your prayers to the gods mean nothing. Your prayers to the gods mean nothing. You are simply a tenant on a very angry and unpredictable piece of land. The flood has taken your land, the drought has taken your crops, or the locusts have taken everything else. You are now a refugee, a man with no farm to work and no food to eat, drifting with thousands of others towards the city in a desperate search for survival. It is in this state of ultimate vulnerability that you encounter the Emperor's officials once more. But they are not here to offer relief. They are here to recruit. You quickly learn that when the state can no longer tax your grain, it will instead tax your body. You can be conscripted for war or forced into labor at any time, and your life becomes the Emperor's problem to solve. A stern-faced recruiting officer, flanked by 2 soldiers, sets up a table in your refugee camp. He isn't asking for volunteers, he is enforcing a levy. Each district must provide a quota of able-bodied men for the Emperor's latest military campaign on the northern frontier. As a landless, rootless man, you are a perfect candidate. The recruiting officer says the Emperor has a fantastic opportunity for you to see the world, specifically the part of the world that is a frozen, windswept desert where people are actively trying to kill you. You are given a coarse tunic that serves as a uniform, a flimsy helmet, and a long spear. You are now a soldier in the Imperial Army. Life as a common infantryman is one of unimaginable hardship. You march for hundreds of miles, your feet wrapped in rags inside thin straw sandals across brutal terrain. Your diet consists of meager rations of millet porridge and salted vegetables. The army's field rations are a gourmet blend of millet gruel and existential despair. It's very filling in the sense that it fills you with regret. You sleep on the hard ground, exposed to the elements, in crowded, unsanitary camps where disease can spread like wildfire. The discipline is iron-fisted and brutal. A moment's insubordination can earn you a vicious flogging, and desertion is punishable by immediate death. The war itself is not a glorious affair of heroic charges. It is a long, grinding stalemate against the tough, horse-mounted nomadic tribes of the steppe. To solve the immense logistical problem of feeding a massive army so far from home, the government might employ a quirky but practical system known as tuntian, or military farms. This means that when you are not fighting, you are farming. You spend half your time training with your spear and the other half breaking the hard northern soil with a plough, growing the very food that will sustain you. You are no longer just a soldier. You are a state-owned soldier, peasant, a cog in a vast military agricultural machine. Was this machine effective? Historians still argue whether the massive peasant conscript armies of Imperial China were a formidable military force due to their sheer numbers and sophisticated state organization, or if they were an inherently weak and brittle instrument plagued by poor morale, logistical failures, and a lack of the professional élan that characterized their nomadic adversaries. But perhaps you are not destined for the army. Perhaps you are conscripted for a different kind of service, corvée labor. As a mainstream historical fact, the Chinese state accomplished its most famous and monumental construction projects from the Great Wall to the Grand Canal through the forced labor of millions of peasants. You are marched, along with tens of thousands of other men, to a vast construction site. Building the Great Wall is a noble calling. You get to haul massive stones up a mountain for 16 hours a day. The pay is terrible, but the view is mostly just more stone. The work is brutal, dangerous, and seemingly endless. Under the watchful eyes of harsh overseers, you quarry stone, move earth in wicker baskets, and drag massive blocks into place using nothing but sheer muscle power, ropes, and wooden levers. The conditions are appalling, the food is barely enough to keep you alive, and accidents are common. The mortality rate on these projects is staggering. You watch men sicken and die from exhaustion, malnutrition, and disease. Their bodies often buried unceremoniously in the very foundations of the structure they are building. Whether you are sent to the frontier to fight or to a construction site to build, the outcome is the same. Your life is no longer your own. You have been torn from your family, your community, your ancestral home. You are now an anonymous, expendable number in service to the Emperor's grand design. You are defending a border you have never seen, or building a palace you will never enter. Your individual hopes, dreams, and fears are utterly insignificant. The state, having failed to protect you from natural disaster, now claims your body as its final, most basic tax. While you toil on the frozen frontier or haul stones for a canal 1,000 miles from your home, your own life of misery feels like the center of the universe. But you begin to hear stories, whispered by veteran soldiers and cynical overseers, about the true source of your predicament. Your suffering, you learn, is just a minor consequence of a much deadlier and more important game being played in a place you will never see, the Imperial Court. You begin to understand the shadow of the Forbidden City, and you learn of the deadly court intrigue that can affect the lives of everyone in the empire. To you, the Emperor's Court is a place of pure legend. It's a world of silk pavilions, jade ornaments, and feasts that would beggar your old landlord. But the stories you hear are not about glamour. They are about a silent, constant, and ruthless war for influence and power, fought not with spears, but with whispers, accusations, and poisons. The players in this game are the most powerful people in the world. There are the high-ranking scholar officials, the ministers who run the great bureaus of the government, constantly forming cliques and plotting to undermine their rivals. A successful career at court requires three things: a talent for poetry, a gift for bribery, and the ability to praise the emperor's new policy right after you finish plotting against the man who wrote it. Then there is the imperial harem, a world unto itself, filled with the emperor's wives and concubines. The mothers of the emperor's sons are locked in a desperate struggle to ensure their own child is named as the heir, a struggle that often involves false accusations and sometimes discreet assassinations. And then there is the third, and often most powerful faction, the court eunuchs. As a mainstream historical fact, court eunuchs were a constant and hugely influential force throughout much of Chinese history. Because they were castrated, they were seen as having no family loyalties and could be trusted with unique access to the emperor's private quarters and the imperial harem. This intimate access gave them immense power. They often controlled the flow of information to the emperor, ran the palace treasury, and commanded the dreaded secret police. In many dynasties, the chief eunuch was effectively more powerful than the grand counselor, a shadowy figure whose favor could make a man and whose displeasure meant certain death. Never insult a eunuch. He may not be able to have children, but he has the emperor's ear and runs the secret police, which are much more effective tools for revenge. The stakes in this game are absolute. Job security for a high-ranking minister is terrible. One day, you're the second most powerful man in the empire, dining with the emperor. The next, you are accused of treason. Your family is arrested, and your official title is headless. Plots are hatched using quirky and deniable methods, like flying notes, unsigned messages passed through trusted servants to test an alliance or suggest a conspiracy without leaving a damning trail of evidence. But what does any of this have to do with you, a lowly soldier freezing on the Great Wall? Everything. The grand decisions that dictate your fate are made in this distant, perfumed snake pit. The very war you are fighting might have been instigated by a court general seeking personal glory to advance his position. The massive canal you are digging, which has claimed the lives of thousands of your fellow laborers, might exist only because a favored concubine suggested it to the emperor as a way to easily transport luxury goods to her summer palace. The ripple effects are direct and deadly. One day, the brilliant general leading your army on the frontier, a man the soldiers respect, is suddenly arrested and replaced by an incompetent court favorite who happens to be the nephew of a powerful eunuch. The new general leads you into a disastrous defeat, and thousands of men like you die because of a power struggle you knew nothing about. Or a faction at court decides to change the tax policy on salt. The price doubles overnight, and your family back in your home village, who are barely surviving, are now pushed into starvation. The emperor himself, the son of heaven, is often at the center of this web, but is he the spider or the fly? Historians still argue whether the emperor was typically the master of the court, skillfully playing these factions against each other to maintain his own supreme authority, or if he was often an isolated figurehead, a virtual prisoner in his own palace, manipulated by the powerful eunuchs, empresses, and ministers who controlled every piece of information that reached the throne. You lie on your thin bedroll in the barracks, listening to the wind howl outside, and you understand. You are a pawn, a single, insignificant piece on a vast game board. Your life and death are not in your own hand. They are in the hands of faceless, powerful people 1,000 miles away, whose names you will never know, but whose ambitions, feuds, and whispers have the power to command your service, demand your labor, and ultimately to demand your life. The shadow of the Forbidden City is long, and there is nowhere in the Empire you can go to escape it. Your term of service on the Great Wall is over, or you have been discharged from the army after a long and pointless campaign. You are given a few coins for your trouble and a document that allows you to travel. Your only goal is to get back to your home village, a journey of 1,000 miles. You are about to discover that moving through the Empire is not a simple matter of walking from one place to another. Travel is a regulated, dangerous, and exhausting ordeal, and getting anywhere requires official permission and a willingness to brave the bandits that infest the road. Your first hurdle is the bureaucracy you've come to know and loathe. The empire is divided into provinces and prefectures, and you cannot just wander freely between them. Your discharge papers act as a kind of internal passport, but they must be presented and stamped at various checkpoints along the major roads. Your travel permit has to be stamped at 3 different offices. It's less a permit and more a scavenger hunt, where the prize is not being arrested at the next town. Lacking the correct paperwork can lead to your arrest as a vagrant, a deserter, or a potential spy. As a commoner, you are not traveling on the well-maintained imperial highways. As a mainstream historical fact, the state maintained a sophisticated network of post roads with way stations and fresh horses. But this was exclusively for official couriers, government officials, and armies on the move. Your journey takes place on rutted, dusty dirt tracks that turn into impassable rivers of mud in the rain. Progress is agonizingly slow, a monotonous tramp of 20 miles a day, if you're lucky. Your world shrinks to the road ahead, the weight of your small pack, and the constant dull ache in your feet. At night, you must find shelter. Your options are a government-licensed roadside inn or a Buddhist monastery, which often provided sanctuary for travelers. The inn is rarely a welcoming place. It's likely a single, large, dirty room where you and a dozen other travelers sleep on a communal heated brick platform called a kang. The food is questionable, the water is unsafe, and your fellow travelers are a motley collection of rough-looking merchants, pilgrims, and drifters whose snores, coughs, and arguments will fill the night. The roadside inn offers a cozy bed that you share with 4 other travelers and a variety of interesting insects. The walls are thin, so you get to enjoy the sounds of a violent argument next door for free. The greatest danger, however, lies on the road itself. The vast, sparsely populated wilderness between cities is often effectively lawless. Banditry is a constant threat. These are not romantic rebels. They are desperate Monophan former soldiers, displaced peasants, or escaped convicts who will not hesitate to rob and murder you for the few coins you carry. You learn to travel with a wary eye, to see every wooded pass and rocky canyon as a potential ambush site. You meet a friendly group of men on the road who are very interested in your well-being. And your purse and your shoes, mostly your purse and shoes. Was the entire countryside truly this dangerous? Historians still argue whether the level of banditry in the Chinese countryside was a constant, pervasive threat throughout the imperial era, or if it was a cyclical phenomenon that flared up primarily during periods of dynastic decline, famine, and social unrest when the state's control was at its weakest. For you, traveling alone and on foot, the distinction is academic. The threat feels very constant indeed. On your journey, you might encounter a quirky and ambiguous figure of the Chinese road, the Yuxia, or wandering martial artist. This character, often romanticized in stories, is a person who lives by their own code of honor and their skill with a sword. The one you meet might be a noble hero who protects you from a group of bandits, or he might be little more than a bandit himself who demands payment from you for safe passage through his territory. He is an unpredictable element in an already unpredictable world. Days turn into weeks, Your journey is a blur of exhaustion, hunger, and low-level fear. You face wild animals in the forests, the risk of getting lost in the mountains, and the constant, wearying suspicion of every stranger you meet. You finally arrive at your destination, not with a sense of triumph, but with a feeling of profound relief. Like a sailor who has survived a terrible storm, you finally return to your home village, a ghost from a half-forgotten life. You are weary from your journey, scarred by your experiences with the law, the army, and the brutal indifference of the world. But you are home. A flicker of hope ignites within you. Perhaps now, having seen the world and survived, you can finally carve out a life of your own choosing. A life of peace and quiet dignity. It takes less than a day for this final, fragile hope to be utterly extinguished. You have come home only to learn the ultimate lesson of your existence. Personal choice is an illusion, and your destiny is, and always has been, controlled by the twin pillars of the state and your family. You thought your future was an open road. It turns out it's a very small, pre-dug hole that is exactly your size and shape. Your parents and the village elders greet you not as a returning adventurer, but as a long-lost component that must be slotted back into the machine. The first order of business is your marriage. The arrangement they made for you years ago still stands. The bride-to-be's family has been patient, but the contract must be fulfilled. Your personal feelings on the matter are not solicited. Your duty is to marry and to produce a son to continue the family name. Next, your profession. You may have learned skills as a soldier or seen how merchants operate in the great city, but these experiences are irrelevant. Your father is getting older, the family pottery business or the small, struggling farm needs you. Your path was laid out for you at birth, and your long, painful detour through the empire has only brought you back to its starting point. You have forged your own destiny, and by a remarkable coincidence, the destiny you forged for yourself looks exactly like the one your father ordered for you 10 years ago. The state which you had briefly escaped immediately finds you again. The village headman, a minor functionary of the great imperial bureaucracy, registers your return. Your name is added back to the tax roll. You are assigned to a Baugia group, once again making you legally responsible for the conduct of your neighbors. The all-seeing, all-demanding state has reclaimed its subject. You look back on your life so far and you see a pattern of inescapable obligation. Your class in society was determined by your birth. The work you could do was determined by your class. The money you earned was subject to the state's taxes and the bureaucracy's corruption. Your body itself was subject to conscription for the emperor's wars and labor projects. Your marriage, the most intimate of relationships, was a family business decision. At every turn, at every moment, you thought you were making a choice. You were simply following a path that had been laid out for you by forces far greater than yourself. This is because the very concept of you as an individual, as a free agent, is a fiction in this world. As a mainstream historical fact, traditional Confucian society did not recognize the individual as the primary social unit. Your identity was purely relational. You were not you. You were the son of your father, the husband of your wife, a member of your clan, and a subject of the emperor. Your life only had meaning and value in how well you fulfilled the duties associated with these roles. This is physically manifested in a quirky but powerful tradition, the clan genealogy book, or Zupu. Your clan elders might maintain a meticulous handwritten book tracing your family's lineage back for centuries. Your birth, your marriage, and the birth of your children will be dutifully recorded in this book with a brush and ink. It is a tangible record of your place in an endless chain of obligation, a document that literally writes your destiny for you. Was this system a prison, or was it a comfort? Historians still argue whether this web of collective responsibility and predetermined roles was perceived by individuals as a suffocating cage that denied personal freedom and crushed the human spirit, or if it was a source of profound security, identity, and social stability, where everyone knew their place and their purpose in the cosmos. In your moment of weary disillusionment, it certainly feels like a cage. You realize that all your struggle-sure attempt at the exams, your time in the army, your long journey home were not bids for freedom. They were simply you being moved from one box to another by a different set of powerful hands. You are the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. As long as your fate and your soul's desires align perfectly with the needs of the state, the clan elders, and your great-aunt's opinion on a suitable marriage, there is no escape. There is only the quiet, crushing acceptance of your role. Your destiny is not something you create. It is something you inherit and endure. The years pass in a blur of toil and duty. You have accepted your place. You work your small plot of land. You honor your parents. You appease the local gods. You pay your taxes, and you quietly resent the crushing weight of it all. The system is oppressive, but it is stable. But then the signs begin to appear. The great river floods again, this time worse than anyone can remember. A drought follows, leaving the fields cracked and barren. Whispers of famine turn into the grim reality of starvation. These are not just natural disasters, they are cosmic omens. You are about to experience the final and absolute worst thing about life in Imperial China. You are caught in the chaos of a collapsing dynasty when the mandate of heaven is lost. The mandate of heaven, as a mainstream historical fact, is the foundational concept of imperial rule. Heaven grants the emperor the right to rule, but only as long as he governs justly, maintains order, and ensures the well-being of his people. If a dynasty becomes corrupt and weak, and natural disasters and rebellions run rampant, it is seen as a sign that the emperor has lost heaven's favor. The mandate is withdrawn, and the door is opened for a new dynasty to take power through force. You are about to live through the violent, terrifying transition. It starts with peasant rebellions in distant provinces, led by desperate men who can no longer feed their families. The imperial army, poorly led and with low morale, is sent to crush them, but fails. Then ambitious generals, seeing the weakness at the center, declare themselves independent warlords. The empire begins to fracture. The complex bureaucracy that once defined your life collapses. The local magistrate, fearing for his life, flees in the night. The yamen is looted and burned. You used to complain about the oppressive order of the magistrate. Now there is no magistrate, and armed men are burning your village. You're starting to see the benefits of oppressive order. What replaces order is not freedom. It is anarchy. Your village is now at the mercy of any armed group that passes through. It might be a column of unpaid, mutinous imperial soldiers who steal your grain and livestock. It might be a swarm of bandits who have taken advantage of the chaos. It might be the advancing army of a rebel general. You have a choice. You can join the rebels and be killed by the government, join the government and be killed by the rebels, or stay put and be killed by both. The career opportunities are really opening up. Amidst this chaos, quirky and dangerous figures emerge. A charismatic cult leader might sweep through the region, proclaiming himself a new messiah. A man came through town yesterday claiming to be the brother of the sun god. His main policy seems to be, "Give me all your food." It's a bold platform. Or a man might claim to be a lost prince of the failing dynasty, gathering an army to restore its glory. These pretenders add to the confusion and violence, their followers often committing terrible atrocities. Your life becomes a daily struggle for pure survival in a war zone. The fields lie fallow. There is no law, no protection, no authority to appeal to. Your carefully constructed world of duty, ritual, and obligation has completely disintegrated. You and your family hide in the hills, watching as armies march across your ancestral lands, their banners bearing the sigils of a dozen different would-be emperors. This is the dynastic cycle, the great, brutal engine of Chinese history. A period of unity and stability is followed by decline and corruption, leading to a period of chaos and warfare, from which a new, powerful leader will eventually emerge to reunify the empire and claim the mandate of heaven for his new dynasty. But was this cycle a good thing? Historians still argue whether the dynastic cycle was an effective mechanism for political renewal that periodically purged the state of corruption, or if it was a profoundly destructive pattern that subjected the Chinese populace to recurring, catastrophic periods of warfare, chaos, and immense suffering for millennia. Huddled with your family in a cave, listening to the distant sounds of a battle, you understand the final, terrible irony. The rigid, oppressive system that controlled your every action, that denied you any personal choice, was also the only thing holding back this tide of utter chaos. Its rules were suffocating, its burdens immense, but it provided a predictable structure for your life. You have survived everything that system could throw at you: the bureaucracy, the labor, the law, the social pressure. Now you must survive the death of the system itself. And as you watch your world burn, you realize that the only thing worse than being a cog in the great imperial machine is what happens when the machine breaks down completely. And so, the great tumultuous cycle of history turns, and our long journey through the hardships of Imperial China comes to its end. The noise of the crowded cities, the sting of the magistrate's bamboo cane, the endless toil in the rice paddies, and the final terrifying chaos of a collapsing dynasty can all begin to fade. Let the weight of that rigid, unforgiving world lift from your shoulders. The crushing expectations of the family, the state, and the gods are not yours to bear. You can let go of the dust, the grime, and the fear. The world of the peasant farmer and the would-be scholar dissolves back into the quiet pages of a history book, a distant story from a time and place far removed from your own. The profound silence you now experience is not the silence of a locked-down city ward or a fearful village. It is the deep restorative quiet of your own peaceful room. Allow the gentle hum of the fan and the softness of your bed to be your reality now. The struggles are over, the trials are done. There is only the calm, steady rhythm of your own breath, pulling you gently down into a deep, safe, and truly restful sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.